Thank you for coming. We do have a lot to cover today, but we're just going to let a few more people come before we get started. We're recording this. Our hope is that we have a good recording that we can share with folks who couldn't make it. And we will also be repeating this webinar a few more times this semester. So if you find it helpful and somebody missed it who would like to attend, we're going to be doing it again in March, April, and May. All right, so should I share screen and get started, Ginny?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's try this. Hopefully you guys can see that with any luck. So welcome everybody. The ASCCC and FACCC are partnering in a series of legislative and advocacy webinars, training webinars. If you're just coming in the room, sorry if I'm being repetitive, but we are trying to train an army of faculty advocates. So we are going to cover a lot of information tonight. Some of it you might know, some of you might know all of it, some of you might know none of it, but we intend to repeat these training webinars. So that will be, if you missed something, you're always welcome to come back. And then we hope that you can start to share what you've learned here today with a lot of people at your local district. We need, like I said, an army of faculty advocates. So often when you know what you're doing, it's a lot easier to get started. So that's what we're going to do today. And let's see, I'll change this. So whoops, yeah, sorry, it went too far. There we go. So we will introduce who we are. And then if you guys want to use in the chat, if you want to include, well, you don't really need your name, but your college and your discipline and why you signed up for this webinar, please feel free to use the chat as much as you want. We like trying to keep track of what you're saying, and then if you have a question, there's a Q&A. And so if you have a specific question about what we're talking about, go ahead and use that Q&A box, because then we can kind of see it quickly and easily that there's a question, as opposed to just sort of chatter or conversation that's going on in the chat. So Ginny, why don't you introduce yourself first and then I'll go second.
Sure. So I'm Ginni May. I'm Vice President of the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges. And I'm also serving as our Legislative and Advocacy Committee Chair. And Wendy and I have been working very closely for the last couple years regarding legislation and advocacy, and really trying to support faculty in your advocacy as well.
And I'm Wendy Brill-Wynkoop. I'm the president of FACCC, and I got my start in legislation back with ASCCC Ledge Committee several years ago, and then started to work with CCA, my union, and then also with FACCC's Legislative Committee, and then here I am. So all things Ledge. One of the things that I found is that we don't have enough faculty that are involved in the legislative process. So one of our goals, between common goals with ASCCC and FACCC, is to try and remedy that. Okay, so let's get started. So tonight we're going to talk about state policy and how it's created in the California community colleges, and there's lots of pieces and parts. We're going to start with what law and regulation is, and then the California Community College governance system, followed by a conversation about what special interest reformers are, and then the budget process, and finally the legislative process. All of that is important to know, and then we'll talk about how you advocate on all levels in the California community colleges. And so we'll start with right at the top with law. A lot of people mix up law and regulation. California Ed Code is law. So if you hear Ed Code or code, most people are referring to law. Law is created in several different ways, primarily by the legislature writing a bill and passing bills. We also get Ed Code or other codes that affect us written through budget bill language, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the webinar. And then we also have the proposition process in California that can create law. But law often is broad in its language. It doesn't have a lot of detail. And the detail comes from regulation, which we will talk about. Ginny's going to talk about in 2 seconds. And so you'll see, if you go back and you read laws, you'll see that they're often broad in their language, and they don't have a lot of detail. And they do supposedly require funding. We do have a piece of law in California that says if laws aren't funded, they're unfunded mandates, they shouldn't be passed. But we've all realized that that sometimes happens anyway.
All right, so now we're going to talk about regulations, and these are the California Code of Regulations, better known as Title V. It's how we refer to them. So we get lots of questions. What's Ed Code? What's Title V? So Ed Code is the law, Title V is the regulation. It has the strength of law, though. And so Title V, there are 2 Title V's, one for the California community colleges and one for the California State University system. So ours is in Division 6. So make sure if you're working with your CSU colleagues and you're both talking about Title V and you're arguing, oh no, that's not in there, because you're talking about 2 different Title V's. Our Title V regulations are enacted by the California Community Colleges Board of Governors. And in areas of academic and professional matters or curriculum and instruction, the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges, through the FACCC, which is the Community Colleges Curriculum Committee, really are the ones that the Board of Governors are to rely primarily upon our advice in those regulations. So we do have areas in which we can really influence regulations. In addition, FACC can influence in other areas as well as our bargaining agents. And we also have other groups which we will be talking about. In order for Title V regulations to be approved, there's a whole process. So it's got to be made public. There's 45 days to hear about, for public comment for the regulations. And depending on how many comments there are, there may be an additional 15 days for comments. So it takes 2 Board of Governors meetings at a minimum to approve the regulations. And then it goes to the Office of Administrative Law. So from there, it takes a while to get them chaptered. And so sometimes you may hear of regulations being changed, but it doesn't show up. So be patient, it will show up. I think we're ready for the next slide.
Okay, this one's yours, Jen.
So this here is just kind of an outline of our current structure here. So a lot of times people put the Board of Governors at the top and the system practitioners at the bottom, but we put the system practitioners at the top. They're the ones who are working with students, who are really doing the work that helps get our students educated, that gets them the services they needed. From the system practitioners, they advise members of the Consultation Council. The Consultation Council meets and discusses different regulation possibilities or other things coming forward. They advise the Chancellor's office. The Chancellor's office advises the Board of Governors. And then the Board of Governors is the one that creates and approves Title V regulations. So there you have it. System practitioners, we wouldn't be what we're doing now if we didn't have system practitioners, which are faculty, students, classified professionals, our administrators, and even our local boards of trustees. And from Education Code, AB 1725, who's heard of that? That's been around for a long time, and that really is powerful. This is what created this whole system in the first place. So next slide, please.
So we're going to dive into that Consultation Council a little bit and let you know what the makeup of Consultation Council is. So we have representation from 5 faculty groups, and we have 6 faculty members who sit on Consultation Council. So FACC has a seat on Consultation Council, ASCCC has 2 seats, and then each of the 3 statewide union representatives have a seat. So CCA is the CTA representation, CFT, and then we have the CCCI or the independents. So all faculty have a representative member, and these are people that you can communicate with to help influence advocacy and what's important to you and what you need to communicate. FACC, many of you may or may not know FACC, but actually FACC started back in the 1950s, and it was a group of faculty who created a membership organization for their profession. And FACC actually was instrumental in creating the legislation that led to public employee unions in the state of California, as well as the legislation that helped to form ASCCC. There's many people who don't, and faculty who don't know a FACC in our system, and we're a really important piece along with the unions in the ASCCC, because we have such a strong presence in the Capitol and such a strong legislative voice and a successful track record with passing legislation. It's important that we make sure that we don't lose sight of FACC and that we support FACC. I think I covered most of this, so I am going to go on to the next slide.
All right, so the Academic Senate was started by FACC, actually. And so that was around 1970, I think it was 1970. So we have our mission here, and our big deal is to empower faculty to engage in local and statewide dialogue. And it's in regard to academic and professional matters. Our positions are driven through a resolution process, which we vote on at each of our plenaries that we have twice a year. And we work very closely with FACC. The Academic Senate is not a lobbying body. We do advocate, and we have really ramped up our advocacy, and partially because there's more and more legislation coming in affecting academic and professional matters, curriculum and instruction. So that's one thing that we're doing, and that's why we're partnering with FACC on this legislative and advocacy webinar, really to help bring faculty forward, to inform faculty that you too can go and talk to your legislature. You can talk to the legislators and their staffers, and the staffers often really have the power with the legislation. So next slide, please. So here are the 10+1 areas of academic and professional matters, and I'm sure most of you have heard of this, and it's in Title V regulations. The State Academic Senate, or the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges, we get our marching orders, so to speak, in both Education Code and in Title V regulations. This right here is in Title V regulations and is a result of AB 1725. So there are these 10+1 areas, and you'll notice the number one area is curriculum, including establishing prerequisites. And generally the first 5 here are so key to the curriculum and instruction part. So make sure that you work with your local academic senates, and that you're also supporting members to work with FACC. We couldn't do this without each other. And one more thing, let me remind you or inform you, the Board of Governors has standing orders to rely primarily upon the advice and judgment of the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges in regard to academic and professional matters, curriculum and instruction. And that's in their standing orders 332. And that's just analogous or similar to the way your local Board of Trustees rely primarily upon or reach mutual agreement with your local academic senates. So you can read more about that on the Academic Senate website. So let's move on.
So, it's pretty amazing in the state of California, and really thanks to FACC and those faculty that came before us who were smart enough to create FACC and know to create the unions in the ASCCC. I did some leadership training in the state of Florida, where there is no Senate, there is no tenure, and there is no unions, or there's very few unions. The unions are trying to make a comeback. But we have an amazing amount of power to influence the process in the state of California as faculty. And we really do need to make sure that we're accessing those 3 strong bodies, FACC, our unions, and the ASCCC, to influence legislation and advocate. The unions under law have what we call scope to bargain compensation and working conditions. So of course, this is going to play out differently on everybody's local campus, depending on their union and their collective bargaining agreement. And this is just a very short list of the scope through from law. Scope actually is expanded. If you go to the PERB website, you can actually look up lots of different case law where you can see where faculty have discussed scope in different laws where scope has been expanded. So all of these areas, if there is a piece of legislation that affects these areas, that's where you should be reaching out to your local union or your state union and making sure that you make your voice clear and heard. On Consultation Council, it would be great if it was just faculty. It's not. There's other seats on that. It is all the system representation of all the system practitioners. So here is a whole group of others, from the CEOs to the trustees to the CIOs to the, everybody else that's represented on Consultation Council. This is a list of the other seats.
And Wendy, there are a lot of administrator groups.
Yeah, that's a lot of groups. I agree. A ton of them. This is one group we like, though.
Exactly. So the Student Senate, and that's another body that is in Title V regulations. And so it's recognized by the Board of Governors as the official voice of students in the California community college system. And just as we work with students statewide, so should the local academic senates and other groups on your campuses. You should work with your students, and not even just your local academic senates. I know there are lots of other groups here that I have worked with. There's the Music Association, there's the Mathematical Association. I know I'm missing some groups, but all of these groups, although they're not recognized on some of these areas here, you should be working with your students, you should be working with your academic senates, you should be working with your FAC members, your union members, et cetera, because we are all in this together. So next slide, please. And then here are some other professional groups. So this is the CSEA is for our classified professionals. We have the CCC AOE, that's a long acronym. And I apologize for all the acronyms. Sometimes it can be a divider between those who are in the know and those who are not. So if you do not understand an acronym that we say, by all means, call it out and say, hey, what does that mean? Ask us to define that acronym. And so we've attempted to define them here so that when these conversations are going on, you don't have to sit there wondering, what are they talking about? And we also have the Council of Classified Employees and the California Federation of Teachers. So CFT has an organization for faculty, and they have one for classified representatives as well. So next slide, please.
So those are all the system partners or practitioners that sit on Consultation Council who provide input to the Chancellor's office, who present information to the Board of Governors. We do have other groups that are outside of the system practitioners. So this diagram is intended to try and show how that outside, really they're outside of our system. When we say system practitioners, some of you on the call might not be, you might not love that administration are giving input, but at least our administrators are working within the system and they're an important part of our community college system. The special interest groups are not part of our system. And this is my attempt at a diagram to try and explain special interest groups, and hopefully this will make sense. But what we start with is we start with a corporation. The corporation creates a nonprofit organization, often in their name or in the founder's name. And that nonprofit organization will be giving lots of money to more nonprofit organizations. And then there's this sort of repeat and rinse and recycle process that happens. So the community colleges do have a lot of money. We are a big part of the public budget. And so there will be a piece of research that's conducted and a really slick research report that comes out, often with a big media storm. And the message will highlight something that we're not doing well, that we're failing our students in some way. And right after that beautiful, slick research report comes out from these nonprofit organizations that are funded by corporations, right after that slick piece of research comes out, there is a piece of sponsored legislation that comes out. Now, we're going to talk about the legislative process in a little bit, but when you sponsor legislation, it means that you're helping shepherd that legislation through. So the piece, the sponsored legislation is this really oversimplified, easy fix that usually has a great name like the best transfer bill ever. And it's hard to argue against many of those sponsored pieces of legislation because of the slick research behind it, but also because there's so much money and power behind moving that through the legislative process. So we have corporations, not only are they donating to nonprofits who are then creating the research, who are then sponsoring the legislation, but those corporations can also make political donations to our legislators. And they also pay for lobbyists who can help move that piece of legislation through the legislature. So then what we end up with is a piece of legislation that's passed. It sounds great. It's not that great. It puts another mandate on the California community colleges. We're already taxed for resources. We're particularly taxed for time. And we end up under the weight of yet one more mandate trying to do one more initiative when we're already trying to finish the other initiative. Often what happens is this oversimplified piece of legislation doesn't really fix the problem. So what do? We fail the system, right? And then we rinse and repeat and start all over again, where we get another piece of legislation coming down from these special interest groups. And they're again saying we're failing our students. So this is kind of the cycle that we've been in for a little over a decade. And this is the cycle that we need to stop. This is really the most important piece that we need faculty to be involved with. There are lots of outside advocacy special interest groups, many of them. This is just a few. And one thing that I want to mention is that often this messaging that we hear is not only that are we failing our students, but that their fix to the problem is really wrapped up in a nice little equity bow. So it's very difficult to advocate against some of their messaging because of this equity piece that they sort of wrap everything up in. Okay, so this is Ginni.
Right. So talking about the reports that come out, this is where your expertise is so important. The legislature do want to hear from you. Even those that are supporting some of these bills coming out, they do want to hear from you. Even the folks that are sponsoring these bills, they have the best of intentions in mind. And so it's our responsibility to come forward and ask questions and dive down deep into the claims. And so the things you want to look at is who wrote the report, who's funding the report. That's a big deal. Where's the money coming from? What sources are used in creating the report and what are not used? And then what's missing from the report? You know, was the data disaggregated or is it all aggregated together? And then where is it that correlation may be conflated with causation? It's very rare that we can prove causation. That's a very difficult bar. And causation is usually shown when every possible correlation is debunked. But it's hard to show causation. So many groups provide reports and they are well-intentioned, but they often support a point of view or a possible policy. And just like we're talking today, we have a point of view and we're trying to get that across. And that's what many people are doing. And they learn how to debate their position very well. So it's important that we as academics and professionals read these reports carefully, always asking these questions.
Thank you, Ginni. We have a question in the question box from Bob Stockwell. Which of these are the most powerful? I'm not sure what these refers to because I just saw it, but if you clarify, we'll try and answer. Thank you, Bob. So the state budget process, we're going to start to dive into how the budget is created. So it's budget requests, and then the actual budget process itself, and then the devil in the details, which is the trailer bills and the budget bills. So that's where we're headed next.
All right, so I think this is me, and I'm playing around on my computer here. So the budget system request. So this is about where the system practitioners, many of those on Consultation Council, as well as at colleges, your CEOs, your boards of trustees, they are given a request. The Chancellor's office comes out with a request, and they're soliciting budget items to go forward to present to the governor. So that happens in July. In September, these requests come forward, and we start formulating them. Through the process, usually they're looked at in October and November, and then they're brought forward to the governor. And in January 10th, the governor announces his first draft of the budget. Then lots of conversation and debate and deal making is going on from January through May. And then in May, the governor's revise comes out, and sometimes there's not many changes, but often there are quite a few changes. If you remember from last year, January, the budget looked really bleak, and when the May revise came out, we were plush with funding. This year, it looks like we have a lot of funding. I hope it doesn't go the other way, so it's bleak come May. It doesn't look like that will happen, but that's part of the process. And then in June, the budget is approved. It has to be approved by June 15th, and then hopefully the governor signs it. So then starting July 1st, the process starts all over again.
So we've had a request from Jennifer she's like, I'm trying to type my answer. So I'm going to pause here. I'm behind on questions. Are there any particular corporations and nonprofit partners that we should look for? Yes, I would prefer, since we're recording this, not to answer it, but I would be happy to talk to you after the meeting. And do you just email our legislators or staffers, or are there others? We're going to talk about how you actually advocate. So we are getting there. We're going to walk you through how you actually advocate and how you meet with people. So I want to make sure we don't have any other questions before we go on, but we are headed towards how you advocate, definitely.
Yes, and thank you for your questions, Jennifer. Great questions.
Okay. So moving on in the budget, and if I see anything else, I'll pause us again, because I want to make sure we answer the question. Sorry if we're going so fast. The system budget requests. There is a lot of information that you can track and follow on this website. And by the way, I did post it in the chat, but if you need it again, we can post it again, a link to this PowerPoint. Anytime something's underlined, it's a link to that actual item. So the California Community College Chancellor's Office has a page called Budget News, and this is where you can really follow a lot of the budget process from January through May. And so with, you already covered system budget requests, Ginny, right? I was answering things in the chat. So this Budget News page, the things that I think are important to look for is there's a link to both the Department of Finance, which is usually considered the governor's sort of side of the budget, and then also the Legislative Analyst's Office, which is the legislative side of the budget. So you'll see that those don't always align. So usually we start with this, first in January, the governor's budget will come out of the Department of Finance, and then we just got the response from the LAO yesterday, I believe. So you'll see a difference in those, and that will be sort of, you can read through those reports and you can start to see where the budget's headed. And then I also would point you to this Prop 98 primer. That's how we're funded. That's our money. It has to go to us. And I think it's important to be able to find that, not memorize it, but find it when you need to find it. You'll also see on this page a link to the system budget requests. FAC put in quite a few, along with COFO, which is the Council of Faculty Organizations. We together collectively put in a lot of budget requests. And that's where a lot of things, how the requests that benefit faculty, like the part-time faculty healthcare money, and also the full-time faculty hiring money happens through this budget process, not through a legislative process.
So someone mentioned that the slide link was missing. I think it's at the end, but we can add it.
I'll put it in again. 'Cause this is
Okay.
your slide.
And one thing, Wendy, if
Yeah.
you could go back to that slide, I want to point out one thing. One thing here, if you notice where it says budget 2022-23, I was just on this page today updating the Academic Senate's legislative report, and there are 2 additional items in there now. There's the January 10th analysis for the January 10th budget analysis, and then there's a new one, the February 10th, with the LAO analysis included. So those are in there, and when you click on this link that Wendy put in the chat, you will see them. Really good to read those. It's much easier than going to the actual budget bill and trying to figure out what's happening in there. So next slide. So again, here's the budget process. This is looking at it from the legislature's point of view. So new requests come in, and then in January, the governor releases his January 10th budget. Budget trailer bills are introduced, and that's in January and February. And so those have been coming through. The hearings take place, and there's a legislative analyst's office report, and that's February through June, as all the debate and arguing at times takes place. And then the governor's revision comes out by mid-May. Sometimes it comes out earlier, but he's doing his revisions, and it usually comes right out towards the end. Sometimes there are a few leaks, et cetera, about what's happening. Then the legislative actions take place in June, and it must be approved by end of day, by midnight in June, on June 15th. Then the governor has time to consider what to do, but it has to be signed and passed by July 1st. That's when the new, it must be passed by the legislature by June 15th. The governor has a little time. And beginning on July 1st is when the new budget year begins. I think we're good to go on that one.
There's a lot of great links in this slide, and they're also in the notes too. So if you've downloaded the Google presentation, if you look at the slide notes, there's all the links in there too.
Right. So those areas that are underlined, those are live links. Let's see, I think this one's okay. I'm moving. You know what? I have lost my cursor here.
Oh no.
There. Because I have this new setup. Because you suggested I do this, so I'm getting used to it, but it's fun. So budget bills and trailer bills, what are those? It's confusing. It's not simple until you get into it for a while, then it starts making a little bit more sense. But as you know, we have our Assembly bills and Senate bills, and those go through the regular legislative process. But a lot of times, statute comes from budget bills or trailer bills, and these are language that's included in the budget that tells us how we're going to spend the money and how much money is going to be spent. So often education code comes through budget bill or trailer bill language. So here are a few examples. The California Community College Guided Pathways Grant Program, that didn't go through the regular legislative process, that came through trailer bill language, and it was put into ed code that way. Calbright, our online college, came through trailer bill language. The student-centered funding formula, or the SCIF, came through trailer bill language. The Cradle to Career Data System, which was Assembly Bill 99 by Assembly Member Irwin in 2021, they decided they don't need that bill, and they put it into trailer bill language, as well as Common Course numbering. So Common Course numbering, it also was included in the Recovery with Equity report from the governor's office, along with the Cradle to Career Data System. So those two elements were recommended in that report. They went through the budget bill from trailer bill language. And so Common Course numbering was also a bill, Assembly Bill 1111. So in the trailer bill language, what it required was that we form a work group and begin funding Common Course numbering, and then the bill came forward. So that is a little bit letting you know some of the legislation we have now that came through trailer bill language and not through the regular legislative process.
Yeah,
So
it's not
slide.
very transparent. I think that's the most important part, is that trailer bills, you have to really go to the website and watch them and look for them. We have a FACCC advocates listserv, free listserv that I will post in the chat so you guys can join it, but I just sent out the trailer bill language for the SCIF that was released yesterday. So if you're not sort of on top of checking that trailer bill language site, a lot of money is spent there and a lot of things and changes are happening. And I highly, highly, highly recommend, if you have not read it, the Recovery with Equity report from the governor's office. It was published in 2020, and it does have a lot of ideas and directions for our system, and they're happening. So please check that out and read it. I would love the list again. Fascinating. I'm referring to the list of trailer bills and budget bills. Oh, it's on the slides. I'll put it in the chat again, but you can just go to Google Docs and then go to slide number 25. Okay. All right, Ginny, you're still up.
All right. So this one are the legislative and budget committees, or the legislative budget committees. So the Assembly, and you know, there's two houses, which there's the Assembly and the Senate. And I think, Wendy, did we talk about this? I can't even remember now.
You're going to.
Okay, we're going to. So there's the Assembly Budget Committee, and that one is chaired by Assemblymember Ting, and the principal consultant for that is Mark Martin, who Mark Martin knows everything about budget on the Assembly side, well, even on the other side as well. And then we have Subcommittee 2 on Education Finance, which is chaired by Kevin McCarty, Assemblymember McCarty. On the Senate side of the House, it's the Budget and Fiscal Review Committee, which is chaired by Senator Skinner. The consultant there is Christopher Francis. And there's also Subcommittee 1 on Education, which is chaired by Senator Laird. So those are people that you may want to reach out and talk with regarding education finance. So next slide, please.
Yeah, if you live in these legislatures, if they're your representatives, you should get buddy up very closely, because they're very important to know. Skinner and Laird, particularly with the SCIF being cracked back open again this year. Okay, so I'm going to try and cover, thank you, Ginny, for covering most of the budget cycle and process. And I am going to try and talk about the legislative process, and it's a lot. So I'll try and make it as simple as I can. But if you go to the California legislator site and you look up how does a bill become a law, this is this crazy diagram you get. I literally got it off our legislative website. So it's complicated. But you don't need to know all those parts in order to be a great advocate. You can actually, if you sort of just know the general process and you meet with your representatives on a regular basis and form that relationship, you can really become a strong advocate. So bills will originate in one of the two houses. So we have assembly members. There's 80 assembly members that represent the state of California and the state legislature, and then we have 40 senators. So a bill will originate in one of the two houses. And if it originates in the Assembly, it's going to have an AB. And if it originates in the Senate, it's going to have an SB. So you'll know which ones were originally Senate bills and which ones were originally Assembly bills. And then they go through a process, and then they repeat the process in the opposite house. So we are in February, but in January, we start to see bill ideas coming forward. So some of the bills that are just coming out in print now, Ginny and I were meeting with legislators in January. They were asking our opinions as they were sort of finalizing those bills and sending them through Legislative Council. So ideas, a sponsor has the idea for a bill. It's typically not the legislature, also, although sometimes it is. Then the sponsor takes their bill idea to an author, finds an author. Will you shepherd my bill through the legislative process? And an author is the actual elected representative in the state legislature. It'll get a bill number. The deadline for the bills to be in print this year is February 18th, which is Friday. So this week is Banana Pancakes Week. tons and tons of flurry of bills being printed, lots to watch and see what's happening. Then those bills are assigned to different policy committees. Typically, our bills are either go to Assembly Higher Education or Senate Education. So Senate doesn't have a higher education, it's just Senate Education. Sometimes our bills will go to other policies. They definitely go to appropriations, which appropriations is the money, like how much is this bill going to cost? So that's the hearing that would have to do with how much this bill is going to cost. And that process happens between March through April. And then in June, the bills that have made it out of the Assembly will start to go to the Senate and vice versa. Bills that made it through the Senate in the first part of the legislative year will then go to the Assembly. The same process happens. They go to policy committees, they go to appropriations, they go to the full floor for a vote. If they make it out of both houses and they're not quite identical because of amendments, then they'll go to a reconciliation process. Once they're reconciled, so we have one perfected bill that both houses have approved, it'll go to the governor's desk. When things go to the governor's desk, there's a choice. The governor can ignore it and it will become law automatically. The governor can sign it, making it law, or the governor could veto it. And if the governor does veto a bill, then the legislature could override his veto if they have 2/3 of a vote in both houses. So if there's 2/3 of vote to override in both the Assembly and 2/3 in the Senate, they could override the governor's veto. So in the state of California, we have a very unique situation. We have a supermajority of Democrats in both the Assembly and the Senate. I know this is probably not super clear on your screen because it's kind of a small graph, but you can see the blue is Democrat and the red is Republican. So you can see the enormous amount of Democrats by comparison to Republicans in each house. Why that's important is because with a Democratic governor, really there is little, even if Newsom had been recalled, it might have been messy, but not much would have happened if the Republican governor was vetoing bills. The legislature could override those bills. But I do want to point out that not all Democrats are the same. Not all legislators are the same. And you definitely have to try and connect, regardless of the political party, with the legislator, regardless of your political party, regardless of your specific background. You have to try and find a way to connect with the legislator, because often when you're advocating for your students and to try and make our system better. And that's where we really have to put politics at the door. But I will mention that in the Democrats, we really have corporate Democrats, we have our labor union Democrats, and then we also have our progressive Democrats. So even though that blue bar looks really tall, we really do have sort of three different varieties of Democrats within the legislature. And you will see differences when you're advocating between those Democrats.
And there's a variety of Republicans as well.
Definitely, but they're such small in majority, they're not very effective in moving bills through. Sometimes they have great bills and great ideas, but often they don't go anywhere because they don't have the same political clout. So it's a rare sort of unbalanced, I think, house. So just to give, and I did mention this, but I want to make sure we're clear on it, because I do find a lot of people mixing these up. It's a little different on the federal level, but in California, the sponsor is usually the individual or the advocacy group or the organization with the bill idea. So when FACCC sponsors a bill, then bills come from FACCC, right? We're the sponsor. And then we go seek an author, a rambula, if that's our author, that would be the elected representative in the California Assembly or Senate that is shepherding the bill through the legislative process. Sponsors are incredibly helpful in doing a lot of the work to help the legislature make the bill successful. And this is where the special interest advocacy groups that are well funded by corporations are, they have some pretty heavy sponsorship behind bills that are doing a lot of that work to make sure that their bills are heard and seen both in the Capitol and outside in media. So just to give you an idea of how many bills are we talking about, it's a lot in a so we have a 2-year session, right? This is the second year of a 2-year cycle. But in a 2-year session, we can have a possibility of 5,600 bills. And in 2021 alone, just to give you an idea, there were about 2,300 bills introduced to the state legislature by the middle of February. 203 of those bills had something to do with the California community colleges, which is a lot. That's in just 1 year. And of those 203 bills, 91 became law. So we had just in last year, even with COVID and all the insanity, we had 91 changes to our California community college system. And I think the year before that, it was around 50. And typically it's somewhere around 75 to 90. So it's important to realize there is a lot of legislation in the queue that is being proposed. We need to fill that queue up with great ideas from faculty, not from these outside special interest groups who think they have these oversimplified fixes. We need to make sure our ideas are the ones in the queue that the legislature is shepherding through.
And to comment on how many bills there are, when I was going through to write up my report today, we're already past Assembly Bill 21 something. So I have Assembly Bill 2122 noted here, and they went beyond that. So that's well over 2,000 Assembly bills. And we're in year 2 of a 2-year period. Senate bills aren't as many, but they're way up over 1,000 right now as well. So there are lots of bills. So where do you find these bills? So here is what the website looks like, and it's called I call it Ledge Info, and the address is on here somewhere. It's probably really tiny there, and I can't see it. But if you type in Ledge Info or click on this link, it'll pop you in here, and so you can take a look at all of the bills, and there's various ways to do it. Wendy goes in and creates a login, and often she's not doing it anymore, but she can track, anyone can track up to 50 bills without having a subscription, and you can receive email alerts. I don't do it that way. I just go in and search every time. And so I can track and review amendments. I can view the bill analysis and look at the different areas. So Wendy's going to go through here. And if you take a look, so if you look at your upper or about 1/3 down the screen where it says text, that tells you the text of the bill. And there are different versions of it as you go through because it changes every time. So the bill was introduced on February 18th of last year. And this is what it looked like then. So you can't see.
AB 1111, by the way, in case you can't read it, which is the Common Course Numbering bill.
And if you notice, this doesn't have anything to do with Common Course Numbering when it was introduced. It says Health and Safety Code. It says it was Department of Housing and Community Development, Regional Housing Need Allocation. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but this is what we call a spot bill. This is not really the bill that was going to be introduced, but it had to be introduced by February 18th, so in it went. Then the next version that popped up had all the edits, and this is when the actual AB 1111 came to be. And so the edits are in here, and each time they edit the previous version of the bill proposal. So there can be lots of them, and for Assembly Bill AB 1111, there were lots of them. So that's one thing to keep your eye on. Also, you can see how people voted if you click on votes.
Votes here.
And that keeps track of the process, how each of the groups voted on all of the versions as it went through the process. And if you look at history, it tells you what happened with the bill. Look at the history of this bill. And then a bill analysis there. You can look at each of the analyses that comes from different staffers.
This is a really important link, I think. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think
you go right ahead.
Amazing good detail in these analysis. And if you create a login and you follow a certain bills, when stuff is posted to this bill or changed to the bill that you're following, you'll get an email. And so what's great is if you don't have to go in and keep looking, is there any analysis on this bill? And as different bodies, and so you see Assembly Higher Ed was the first analysis, and then Assembly Appropriations, then it went to the full floor, then it switched houses, right? So in July, it switched houses to Senate Education Committee, then Senate Appropes, it went back to Senate Appropes, then it went to the Senate floor, and then back to the Assembly floor, and it had to go back to the Assembly because there was that reconciliation piece that they had to reconcile between the two. So this is there's so much data in here. If you go in, you'll see lots of information from different organizations and the staff analysis of the bills. Sorry, Ginni.
Oh, no, this is great. And then there are other different areas you can look at here where it says comments to author. That's where you can submit comments to the author regarding the bill. And there's just a lot to look at here. And if you want to search a bill, Wendy, can you click up on bill search there? You know where I'm talking about. Not there. I don't do right there. Yeah. So here you can go in, you can search a bill by number, or you can move over and you can search bills by author, different years. You can also just not put in anything and hit search, and then all the bills will populate. Whoa. So you can go through and see all the bills. That could take a while. And if you put in keywords, like I put in community colleges in quotation marks, and it will pop up all bills that have that language in it.
Live, I can't type.
I know, it's hard. And so then you click search, and
there we go.
Yep, there's 27 pages of 10 each. So possibly the last page might not have 10, but nearly 270 bills that mention community colleges. And that's just for 2021 and 2022 so far. Yep. And we're not done with the introduction of bills for 2022.
Nope. Okay.
So next slide. And
yeah, go ahead.
Here is the spot bill that I mentioned. So AB 1111 started out as a spot bill, and it's supposed to be a bill that, it says that it's, written in such a way that it's innocuous. So you'll see something in there that, maybe they'll line out a word and then rewrite the word. And it's like, why are they putting this bill forward? At least that's what I thought the first time I saw a few of these bills. I'm like, what kind of legislation is this? It's because they're still in the process of writing some other legislation, and they had to get something submitted. So they can't submit a bill after the deadline, but they can change the bill after the deadline. So that's why there are spot bills. And we try to keep our eye on those as they come forward. So next slide.
Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped over to that other example too soon, the live example, but that's okay. We got it done anyway. So
right.
It's never perfect. It's never perfect. So this is the website we were just showing you, and all the different things that you can look at here on this site. By the way, when you have a spot bill, and the bill then, you look at it the next time and it's all red and they've added all new stuff. That's called gut and amend. So often you hear that expression. That's often a spot bill will be totally wiped out in totality, and they put all new language in. The other thing we wanted to point out is the bills are kind of hard to figure out. I think they are. They have an outline structure, but the outline structure is sort of slammed all to the left. And so sometimes I've had people call me and they're confused about how to read a bill. And so if you simply take the bill, I will often, if it's a complex bill, not all bills are complex, some are kind of simple and short, but if a bill is more complex, then what I will do is I'll just pull it into Word, and I'll just tab over to get it into the outline form. And this is a much easier way to read the content of a bill if you take the time to actually tab it over and see what fits underneath each appropriate outline. So just match up the letters, and you can see that on this example, the code section with the little a is actually aligned with this B over here down below. So you have to kind of match those two up, but sometimes it gets complicated on how to read a bill.
So
Wendy,
we have a
couple, yes.
Yeah, so a couple questions about how do you know if something is a spot bill. Generally, you either have to go perusing through all the bills and notice that there's hardly any change to one, or you have to wait until you see something that's been, undergone gut and amend. So this one here, could it be a spot bill?
This was a spot bill. So this was 1111. And
this is 1111.
yeah, so I just popped over to live site. This is 1111, which was a spot bill. And typically they're gonna like add a comma or an and. They're gonna make a very nominal change. And I usually just flag those and watch them. Sometimes they're holding them for the next year, right? So they don't end up doing anything with them in the first year of the 2-year cycle. They ended up doing something in the second year, but usually it's a very small change. So here we have housing development, comma, including housing for low-income community college students, comma. They didn't really change much in the bill, so this would definitely be a spot bill. And then the changes as they come in, I'll show you the gut and amend again. So then when it went to the assembly in March, you can see how they've just literally struck out everything that was in that original existing intent language and law, completely struck out, whole new area. So that's how you can tell which ones are the spot bill. Usually the bills are just really thin. There's only like 1 word or 3 words changed.
Right. And they use it for legislation proposals that are not fully cooked yet, that are not ready to be put into a bill, but they know something is coming.
Yeah. So Bob Stockwell has a question. What corporation or nonprofit interest group sponsored this bill for Berman? 1111. I asked Berman's office. They said it didn't have a sponsor, but it is addressed directly in that Recovery with Equity report. So if you read the Recovery with Equity report from the governor's office and you just get to the back page, which it has a list of all the special interest groups that help contribute to the report. So I think that would probably be the easiest way to find the answer. Although I did ask Berman directly and he said there was no sponsor. So, okay. So moving on, Ginny? Yep.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, this one's yours.
All right, so I'm moving around playing with my cursor. I have no idea where it is. Anyway, there's a lot to keep up with here. So what Wendy and I both do is we have a list of all these different organizations and their legislative websites, and we peruse them. We go stalking these websites and find out where these different groups stand, what bills they put up on their website, and the statements that they make about them, how they describe them, what kind of positions they take on them. And that kind of helps us to make sure we're not missing something, and helps us to understand some of the nuances regarding the bills that we may not see just from reading the bill language itself. So there's one for the Academic Senate, that's ASCCC, FAC, the Faculty Association for California Community Colleges. We have the CFT here, and that's the California Federation of Teachers. I'm restating these acronyms just so you're not lost. CCA, which is also a union, the Chancellor's Office, so that's the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office, track legislation, that's useful. And the League, that's CCLC, the Community College League of California, they track bills as well. So each group has different supports or opposes or no positions. Some groups sponsor bills, some don't, but this is really a good place to go. And all of these links here are live.
So if you want to know what bills, if you want to make sure you don't miss any bills that are relevant to the California community colleges, I recommend the Chancellor's Office link, because this used to be called the Matrix. It used to be like a PDF that was sent out. Now it's a live website. And if it has to do with the California community colleges, they're tracking it. So they do add their positions after, as they come in, which they don't take many positions on too many bills, but they will, but it does have all the bills. So I think that's an important place. And then just to note that a lot of these organizations legislation is just coming in now. The deadline is Friday. So a lot of these organizations have policy or committee structures to approve supporting bills or opposing bills. So you're not going to see, if you jump to these websites right now, you probably see a lot of last year's information. And then Ginny, you wanted to share, this is what ASCCC site looks like.
Yeah, so we've recently updated our website. So if you click on the legislative updates, you can find it on our website by going to, you don't have to change this now, but if you go to pardon me?
It's linked on our slide.
Okay, perfect. But if you clicked on executive committee, there would be two areas you could go to. You could go to, meetings and agendas, and we have a legislative report for every single executive committee meeting that we have. And those are future meetings, you got to go down to one of the meetings here. That's okay. And we'll have a legislative report. So we submit a report when agenda items are due, and then right before the meeting, the report is updated and added to that meeting as well. And so if you'll notice here, there's usually an updated report. And here's one of our legislative reports, and we go through and there you go. So we have a summary, so you can just see the bills, and then further on down the document is more detail about the bills. There are other places you can find the report as well. And if you ever get lost trying to find any of this, you can just send an email. And I often go to these other websites as well and double check the work for the Academic Senate report.
Cool. Lots of good information. Okay, so moving on to what Jennifer, I think it was Jennifer wanted all along, which was the advocacy part. So there's lots of advocacy that can be done. We're going to talk about advocacy with your statewide legislators, but really you need to advocate with both your statewide system partners and also at the district level. So whoever you know that you can influence or talk to about what students need and why they need it is an advocacy pressure point that you should be using. But because the statewide legislators are usually the piece that most people don't know about, that's the part that we're going to spend the most time on.
And Wendy, also, if you're with one of your statewide organizations, so one of the community colleges, an organization for your discipline with community colleges, you can go with that organization and advocate as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be with your college or your district. It can be with your organization. Many organizations do that. And your professional organizations are part of the system as well.
Yep, absolutely. That's how I got started, is advocating with the ASCCC. I just volunteered for their ledge committee and then started to work with CCA and then also with FACCC. And it is a lot of fun to go to the Capitol and walk around and meet legislators. Unfortunately, because of COVID, they're not 100% back doing that yet, but they hopefully will be back pretty soon because it is pretty spectacular to be able to do that. The benefit, though, is that we can advocate via Zoom. So we'll talk about that too. You can make an appointment and Zoom right from your desk and meet with your representatives or your representative staff. So who are your representatives? Each of you have an assembly member and a senator that represents you from where you live in the state of California. And then if you don't live close to your campus, or sometimes even if you do, I remember there was two, like College of the Canyons was like the dividing line between two senators for a while. So you might also have a representative that represents your district or two different representatives for your district. So these are the people you should know. And if they are one of those committee chairs that we mentioned earlier, then you should definitely make sure that you are connecting with them because they're key players in the process. Oh, we haven't mentioned, we mentioned the budget people because we're about to mention who the committee chairs are right now. So in education policy, we have higher ed in assembly. That's Medina. He's retiring. And so he has really been a force in higher ed and really been enormously helpful, particularly for faculty. He was a faculty member, then he was a board of trustees, then he became an assembly member, and he spent a long time in the assembly. He didn't go up to the Senate, or over to the Senate, and now he's retiring. So this is his last year. Things will be very different when he is not there. His chief consultant is Janice Warden Washington. She's unbelievably amazing, great to work with, great to meet with, and knows so much about community colleges. It's a really fun conversation. Don't ever underestimate the staff. They're often consistent in the Capitol and really know a lot. And so they can be very helpful to you if you're talking about something that you want to advocate for. And then on the Senate side, we have education, which is Connie Leva, who is also going to step down from her role at the Senate. So we are our two top chairs who are very great, wonderful faculty champions are both, this is the last year for them. And then Ogalilia Ramirez is the consultant on the Senate side, who's also amazingly wonderful to work with. So we have a question in the chat. Angelica says, do we contact the representative from the community college we teach or the one from our home area? Well, both, absolutely. Because you are an expert and we need faculty who are experts talking to legislatures. So often if you want to meet with a representative and you're not a constituent either by your campus or by your home address, sometimes they don't want to take the meeting. If you use a faculty organization that you're working for, then often they'll meet with you based on the faculty organization. But
like the committee chairs or their staff.
Right.
And if you can get a meeting with their staff, like if you got a meeting with Janice Warden Washington or Ogalilia Ramirez, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
So on this slide here, connecting with your legislator, and it kind of, we're segueing right into that. So keep this in mind, legislators are people too. So find ways to connect with them before launching into an ask. What I always like to remind faculty of is think about when you're meeting your students for the first time. That student that comes to you and asks, how are you, before they start asking you for things, that's so much easier for us as people to realize that they acknowledge that we're people too, instead of, when someone comes and says, hey, I have a bone to pick with you, I don't like what you're doing. That's not a good idea to start out that way. Connect with them, find something about them, connect with them, and realize they're people too, and thank them for the work that they do. Read about their interests and their legislative proposals. So Wendy put up the slide to locate your legislator's website. So do that, look at it, contact the legislator, and we just talked about which ones to contact. You don't have to only contact your own, but that's the best place to start. Locate the district office for your legislator, and sign up for updates and press releases so that you are informed about what's happening. Find events that your legislator is presenting at, so you can learn about your legislator's interests that way, and you might be able to meet them in person. And then really take time to figure out what your legislator is interested in so you can connect in that venue. And next slide.
Most of the meetings are via Zoom. So in scheduling a meeting, you can use their websites to often schedule a meeting or connect with their scheduler. And then you can let them know that you're comfortable meeting in person if they're doing in-person meetings, either in the Capitol or in district, right? In district will be close to your home or your school. And if you don't want to meet in person, you can request a Zoom meeting.
Exactly. So building a relationship, you should do this year round. So we're already in February. However, a lot of the debate hasn't begun yet. So this is a really good time for you to reach out and just have a meeting with your legislator without making an ask of any type at all. Just get to know them. One thing to keep in mind when you meet with your legislator is try to avoid winning a debate. They're politicians and they're very good at debating. They're not interested in talking with someone who's trying to one-up them. So you want to leave that legislator's office at or above the same level as you entered. You don't want to go down and have them think, I never want to meet this person again. So don't go in trying to win a debate. Go in trying to make a connection.
True. Very true. I have to say that I have probably made that mistake more than once, just because it's easy to fall for, especially if you're a passionate faculty member. But you want to meet with them as regularly as possible. So that doesn't just have to be a one-on-one meeting. You can go to a town hall meeting. They all have town halls. You can go to a district meeting. They offer district meetings for their constituents. They have special events. They love, sometimes nobody shows up at those. They love when people show up at special events. They'll do things like food drives or, organize a caroling at a senior citizen's home or something like that. And if you can go to those and show that you are interested in being there for them, then often that's that's when you do have an ask, when they're going to listen. If you just show up in their office to yell at them about AB 928, it doesn't go well, right? Oh, there's Twix. Twix is making an appearance. Hi, Twix. So, so no, and always ask how you can help the legislature, right? So it shouldn't just be about what you need. It's also about what they need. So what can you provide for them and how can you connect with them in any way? You can bring them reports. All our colleges have glossy reports. You can bring them something interesting your students have done, anything that you can do to sort of make that connection and make it on a regular basis would be great. Question, you mentioned the people for higher ed are the other folks that are important. Skinner, yes, is in budget, and Laird, right. So Senate budget or Assembly budget are important. And then also Assembly higher ed, and Medina, and then also Leva for Senate education. Those are going to be the chairs. There's also people who sit on those committees who may be your representatives. So it's not just the chairs. The chairs of the committees are usually the top cheese. But for example, on Assembly higher education, a new legislator, Valladares, who is by College of the Canyons. So I will meet with her because she's on higher education, Assembly higher education. So I have a College of Canyons connection. That's my discipline at my school, sorry, and she's the legislator for that area. So that works. So go ahead and look up those committees and see if you know if your legislators fall on those committees. If you do, they're an incredible, important pressure point for legislation.
And you can find those, here they are at the assembly.gov or the senate.gov.
Push a button and it shows up for you. So these are all links, and you can go visit the full Senate, and it has a roster of the full Senate, and you can look up the committees, and then you can, for both the Senate and Assembly, the Assembly, and then you can also see what their agendas are and when their meetings are, and you can stream them so you can watch them. We had Assembly budget yesterday. Yes, Assembly higher ed budget yesterday, and then tomorrow is the Senate sub 1 on the budget for community colleges. So tomorrow morning is the Senate is going to hear the community college budget. So those are interesting to watch, especially if you're at your desk for a while and you want to just leave something on in the background. You might try jumping in and streaming some of the committee meetings. And you can also provide testimony for many of them now over the phone. So,
and you can stream them from your cell phone, like when you go for a run.
Yeah, you go walk around the block, get exercise and listen. Okay, so in a legislative advocacy meeting, you're there to represent the faculty. Now you might go and represent some other interest in your life, but if you're going there for the California community colleges, I think it's important to say that you're a faculty member, and then say what your connection is that's most relevant for that meeting. So if I go, I will likely say I'm president of FACC on the state level. If I'm doing something for my local college, I might say I'm a faculty member at College of the Canyons. But it's important to sort of say who you are and why, assert your authority, right? As an expert, as a faculty member, as opposed to just saying, oh, I'm Wendy and I'm one of your constituents. It's important that they know that we are experts within our field. And you really want to share your stories and your experiences, because those stories and experiences will make the legislation and what we need to do with the legislation really come alive. It's important to keep those messages short and concise and not sort of roll on and on and on. And often we'll take students. I know Bob Stockwell takes students on ledge visits, and sometimes the students will get a little rambly. So it's important to practice ahead of time, think about what your messaging is, think about what your ask is, make sure you're focusing on the specific issues. You don't want to just go and say, hey, I'm Wendy, I just wanted to meet, I'm your constituent. The legislator is busy, has a lot to do. It's great to say hello and make a connection within the first few seconds, but then you really have to kind of get to the point of what the meeting's about and why you're there and how you can be helpful to the legislature and how the legislature can be helpful to you. If you don't know something, don't make it up. Don't make it up. Don't make it, you'll get caught in a bind. Say, I don't know. It's okay to say, I don't know, and then say, I will follow up with you and I will make sure that you get a copy of that, or I will make sure I email you and let you know the answer. This is a great way to continue the relationship and help solve a problem for them.
And you know, we can't say it enough, make a connection. You don't have to make a fake connection. And if you're not able to make a connection right away, again, don't make it up. Don't pretend. They can see right through that. I mean, one thing that you can do research on your legislator. And then one thing that I recently did, I was meeting with a legislator, and I had met with this legislator a year ago, and there was some weird construction going on outside. We were meeting via Zoom, and there was some weird construction going on outside, and it distracted the legislator, and the legislator was a little bit concerned, but it was fine. And we got through the meeting and everything, and it was a good meeting. And so this year when I met with the legislator, I remembered that and I asked about it. And the legislator was like, oh, wow, you remember that, great memory. So that was a connection right there. And it was something about this legislator that I remembered. And in addition, I had done some research on the legislator, and the legislator had passed or had written a resolution on something of interest to her. And it also was of interest to me. And so I commented on that and thanked her for it. And so that I wasn't asking for anything. The group I was with, we weren't asking for anything, but it was just a little bit of a connection at the beginning and at the end, trying to build a little bit of a rapport, not much, but so it's not so rigid and formal and oh, I can't think of a better word, but there was a little more personality involved, a little more people-to-people conversation instead of voice-to-voice, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I think it's practice too, because I think, when you first start, you get a little nervous, and then you realize they really are very lovely. The staff and the legislators are very lovely. They love to listen to you. They're there to talk to you. They want to hear from constituents. So, if you take a breath and calm down a little bit and try and be personable, you'll realize that they really are there. They love being thanked for legislation that they've passed, or policies that they have that align with your policies. You can go through their websites. Remember Medina's website, there's a screenshot, but they all have their websites up with their policy platforms. So you can go there and you can find something that will connect you. If you can't, sports, are huge, like whose team you can usually figure out where they went to school, something like that, where you can make a connection. And then it sort of breaks the ice, and then you can start to develop the relationship.
Yeah, and Wendy's right. That first few visits that you have, you're going to, at least for me, I was terrified. I knew I was going to say something dumb, if I could even say something that made any sense. But hopefully you're with other people, and the more you do it, the better you get.
I love this quote, the power of the story. There are two ways to share knowledge. You can push information out. You can pull them in with a story. And I think stories are super important. Try and be as specific as you can. Try and use a student's name if you're using a student's story. I can tell you that in the last month, and I don't want to be specific, but there is a piece of legislation that's coming out that we really were trying to influence with a data point. And we really wanted it to add some data to it. And I used a story of one of my students who's named David Lopez. And it was really helpful, I think, when I had a real person and a real story with real dates and times and how it affected his life and where he is now. So if you can have a real authentic, good story to represent something, then I think it's incredibly helpful. So stories are a great way to really pull them in and have them understand, the life of our students and the importance of what our students are going through. Bring students if you can. They're amazing. Just coach them a little so that they get flustered sometimes.
And we won't always have a story. We won't always have a great connection, but strive for something. So there are do's and don'ts of advocating. Be prepared. Make sure you know what you're talking about and try not to ramble. Respect and honest. That's really key. Show the assembly member and the staffer, show them respect, especially the staff person. Do not look at the staff person as some lower individual. They are well educated, they are well informed, and they're doing most of the work. And be honest. Be sure to breathe. Oftentimes we start talking quickly like I do, and then we don't breathe and our voices go high and start to it starts making people nervous to listen to you speak. So breathe. Be reliable. If you're going to tell them you're going to bring information back to them, bring information back to them. Don't say, oh yes, I'll get that to you, and not return it. Ask for support. Ask for the assembly member or the senator's support, or ask the staffer, will your assembly member or will your senator support our cause? And then leave something behind. Hopefully not your glasses or something like that, but leave a business card, a brochure for your organization, something so that they can remember you with.
So I would also say bring extras of whatever you're going to leave behind, because often the staff member and the legislature want one. So make sure that you have more than one copy. So some really basic if you're in-person etiquette, be on time, but also be patient, because you're going to wait. Wear business attire, comfortable shoes if you're in the Capitol, because it's a lot of stairs and a lot of walking. Introduce yourself with your affiliation or school so they understand, where you're from. Follow up with the staff, follow the staff when it comes to handshakes or fist bumps. This is one of those awkward things now. So just, ask what they're comfortable with, and then bring lots of extra copies of your materials because you're going to need them. Okay, and so then on Zoom, pretty much the same stuff, but just a few other things. Minimize personal distractions and noise, like dogs, like Twix, and like Juno, who is just barking. But we understand it's the reality. Do the best that you can do with it, but try and turn off other things like notifications on your computer that might keep dinging, or your phone that might be going off, because they do really take people out of the moment. Mute, especially if you're in an advocacy group when you're not talking. Try and make sure your background's not distracting, or your lighting or camera angle. You can change your name. If it says, if it doesn't say who you are, you can add your affiliation. That's helpful. Minimize anything like Zoom filters. The cat thing was hilarious. I'm not a cat, but we're not going to do that with our legislators. And then wear business attire from at least the waist up. I'm not kidding you. I have sweatpants and Uggs on with my suit jacket. That's my common go-to now. And then also have materials ready to either email to them or to post them in the chat. And then it's really important to send thank yous. They expect a thank you. So if you met with them, email them right away. Dear so-and-so, thank you so much for meeting with me. Here's the such and such that you asked for. And if there's anything else that I can ever do for you, please let me know. I had an advocacy call today. I'm hoping that this author will accept our amendments, and they asked for something. So it was within 3 minutes that I had written the thank you, attached what they asked for, and sent it off. They really appreciate you, and will keep reaching out to you if you provide that kind of response to them, because it is a fast world that they live in, the staffers, and when they need something and they know that they can text you or email you and you can provide it for them, then they're going to keep reaching out to you. And then when you need something from them, you're going to have that relationship. It's all about building a relationship, not just going and yelling at them when you don't like something.
Right. And often you can have an email ready to go with their email address typed in it, so that even during the meeting, if you're meeting with, if you have a couple of colleagues with you while you're meeting and they ask for some information, one of you can go and put that in the email and send it to them even before the meeting is done. So system-wide advocacy with system partners. This one here, go on some of these visits with your system partners. Wendy and I are working here together. Sometimes we have group visits. Last summer, we had a lot of group visits with many system partners over AB 928 and AB 1111. Those are valuable meetings. We would meet individually as groups and together. So look at, if you're working with the Academic Senate, connect with your ASCCC legislative liaison. If you're a faculty member, at your college, do you have an ASCCC legislative liaison? If you don't, you should. And so you can use this link here, check here to find out who your liaison is. And you can sign up for ASCCC listservs here. You can join the FAC listserv to be aware of faculty advocacy concerns. And Wendy just signed me up for the FAC listserv last month because I was way too lazy to go do it myself. And so she got me in there. It's so valuable to do these things. And you can also become a member of FAC. Sometimes if you wait till the Academic Senate plenary session, there's a little bit of, little, but don't wait.
Don't wait. We need you guys. We need you. So all these three, the unions and FAC and ASCCC have committees to serve on, and most of them meet via Zoom. So you can do statewide service and really learn a lot. That's how I got started. And, you know, just call up your union at the state level. Some of them have some local opportunities. And then, you know, anything that you can connect with in terms of advocacy. Some of you have Rotary clubs or a community group or community organizing or student clubs. Anything that you can connect with to build those advocacy pressure points is what you need to do. As many connections as possible is what we need to make sure that we're doing in order to benefit our system.
And then if you're working with your college, with your district, even with your departments, meet with the leaders in these areas, find out what their interests are, what they know. They have valuable information. So, you know, you have your department chairs, you have your faculty leaders, which would be your academic senate presidents, your union presidents, you have your college president. Maybe you have some different interests, but you both have a common interest, and that's students. Your board of trustees. The academic senate has a right to appear before the board. And so you really want to work with your board of trustees, especially in academic and professional matters. And of course, connect, like Wendy was saying, with students, student clubs, and government leaders. Connect with your classified professionals. They have a very powerful voice that is often not heard, but they know what's going on the campus. Connect with them. They can fill you in on so much information. And then other local representatives that may be on your campus or surrounding your campus.
There's tons of elected representatives, board of trustees, water boards, city councils, you know, tons and tons of places. So do we want to pause here before, I think, because our next slide is some bills to watch. So let's pause for a second and see if there's any questions we haven't answered. That was a ton of information. We are going to have the opportunity to repeat this webinar in March and April and May, and we hope to post the recording so that you guys have access to it. And then you do have the PowerPoint. So there's lots of resources. I know that we dumped a lot of information, but the best thing to do is practice.
And we're hoping for the next three that they will be meeting style so that we can have a little back and forth.
I'm just waiting to see if there's any questions. I think, oops, if somebody wants to raise their hand, I can allow you to talk if you've been like, I don't want to type it in the chat. Oh, here. Jason has a question. Where do issues like STRS get discussed? Can you
That's
be
a
more
good question.
It is a good question. So there's the STRS board meetings, which FAC always has a representative at. I know that that's the enormous amount of the discussion. In the budget there, well, it's being discussed and it should be brought up in Senate Ed tomorrow. I know it was brought up in the Assembly Higher Ed, so there's conversation about taking some of the outside of Prop 98 money and putting it towards the STRS-PERS liabilities on the local campuses so that that's offset from the local campuses. But most of the decisions about CalSTRS and PERS would be made at the CalSTRS board meetings, which we can add to these slides if we remember. And then also the budget decisions in terms of offsetting the cost of that it was not in the governor's budget. It was last year, was not in the governor's budget this year. So I know that Senator Laird brought it up a couple weeks ago. So he intends to talk about it.
And also at your college or district or in any of these organizations, budget, STIRS, et cetera, are also discussed possibly in your academic senate meetings with your unions. And then, from there, they can communicate with us, the academic senate, or with FACC, with Wendy and Evan and others from FACC, some of this information. And we could also bring some of this information to COFO, which is the Council of Faculty Organizations, which we mentioned earlier. But there are different venues. And so getting the information to the, organization leaders is what's really important.
Mm-hmm. I just remembered something with CalSTRS. Oh, and that I haven't reviewed it yet, but the legislative analyst report that just came out says something about the CalSTRS PERS liability also. So that I know that Paul Steenhausen mentioned it yesterday in the Assembly Budget Committee. So that's another couple of places to look, Jason, for your answer. We have another question. I see the upcoming slides on legislation. Will we be touching on budget priorities and advocacy? Not today, because we just don't have the positions ready, but probably as we get, further along, maybe in March, we'll probably add some. Whoops, I was reading it and it disappeared. Where'd it go?
I did that, sorry.
So how many bills do you think FACC and ASCCC will take a position on? Oh my gosh, Bob used to be on Bob used to be on the Ledge Committee. It's a lot. I don't know. We probably take a position on, we usually sponsor 2 bills, co-sponsor at least another 3 bills. Co-sponsor would be with another organization. And then we usually take a position, maybe 20, 25 bills for FACC. So I don't know about ASCCC. It's hard to know.
We've taken 4 positions this year so far, and there may be some more positions at our plenary session. We don't take nearly as many positions on bills as FACC does. We do not lobby, we advocate, and we have a much narrower, not scope, because that's for unions, purview. Wendy and I have been talking about this. We have a much narrower purview on academic and professional matters, which is pretty broad. But our philosophy is when we take a position on a bill, we want it to have impact. So we try not to just take a position on every single bill that floats our way.
Yeah.
Even though we always have an opinion on things, it's not necessarily wise to express them loud because we want our positions to have power.
Another question, if the communications department wants to advocate in response to AB 928, what would be the best advocacy looking forward to how AB 928 will be implemented? In other words, how does advocacy work after a bill is passed? Great question, Jennifer. Awesome, awesome, awesome question. So 928 was a bill which created new law. And so law is broad, and then the devil in the details is in regulation.
ASCCC. Yes.
So we will see, we'll watch. ASCCC is one, we didn't really talk about that piece of the puzzle, and we don't have to get in that much detail, but we will see Title V regulations coming through Consultation Council and then the Board of Governors. So those are some areas that you can advocate. There is the
Let me tell her one thing.
Yeah.
About AB 928, you can provide input if you go to the Academic Senate website on the land. Oh, okay. If you go to the landing page, you'll find a place where you can provide input. Your input is valuable, and it will go to the work group, the ASCCC subcommittee on AB 928, that is proposing a singular general education pathway according to the legislation.
So those on the call who don't know AB 928, I would take a good look at it. It passed and was signed into law in October. It is a big transfer package from Berman, and it has 3 different components. The reason I tell you should look at it is that every one of the system practitioners were in opposition to the bill, and it literally slid right through the legislature without a hiccup. And was signed into law by the governor. So when you have all system practitioners in opposition to a bill, fully opposed, officially and fully opposed, and it still goes through, That means that we are no longer in control of the system, that special interest groups that sponsored a bill are in control of our system. And that should be a wake-up call to everybody on this call, that we really need to be doing something different, because I have a slide in another deck that shows all the different legislation that's gone through in the last decade. And it's pretty extraordinary when you look at it in totality, that really all these legislative mandates that have been coming down have really transformed what we do. More banana pancakes, yes.
Mhm.
Okie dokie. So any other questions before we go on to the last couple slides? Just want to make sure I'm not leaving. And I think if you guys can raise your hands, then I can if you wanted to ask your question out loud. I think I know how to do that on the webinar, but if not,
Yeah.
you can use the box.
So I think the next couple slides may generate some questions
All right,
as well.
let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, so here are some bills to watch. And I really recommend that you go to these bills and read them in their entirety, and then read them again and read them again, and then go to the different websites that we listed on for the different groups and their legislative positions on these bills and analyses. And be careful when you're talking about the bills and what the bills require, that you are getting the accurate information about what the bills require and not what someone down the street said the bill requires. So read it for yourself. So AB 1705 is by Irwin, is billed to clean up the language in AB 705. It's going to, currently the initial proposal has a lot more restrictions on placement and enrollment in transfer level English and mathematics than AB 705 did. So we're still watching to see what happens with the bill. They're going through some amendment processes right now, and meetings and discussion are occurring. So I recommend that you go and read it and wait till the next version comes out, but start having these conversations. Wendy, do you want to add anything to that?
No, this is going to be the big one, guys. This is going to be the big bill this legislative season, and making sure that the faculty voice is heard and heard loudly, because the idea is really to remove remedial classes from our system in totality. So I think we have to be very, very, very loud and very careful about this bill, and we can't just sleep on it.
And very collegial and thoughtful and accurate, and provide lots of data and bring students into the conversation. It is very important to bring students into the conversation as you are advocating one way or the other for amendments for this bill. So we'll be talking about it more as we go forward. AB 1187 is expanded tutoring. This bill really kind of came out from AB 705. However, past legislation prior to AB 705, quite a while ago, we had tutoring for our students for all courses, and then it went away. This is bringing it back. So read about it. The Academic Senate just recently voted to support this bill. It's good for our students. Wendy?
Yeah, I'm trying to find that screenshot of all that legislation. So
Okay.
sorry I can do both. So okay, so AB 1746 is an awesome bill. I hope we're all going to support it. It's Cal Grant reform. It's so needed. We were so close last year. We had a great bill that made it through both houses, and then the governor vetoed it because of money. So Leyva and Medina have met with the governor again, and they have hashed out the differences, and we're all super excited about AB 1746 in hopes that this will provide Cal Grant reform for our students. I believe every system partner is in favor of this, or will be if they're not officially yet. So this is the big, great hope. This is the positive news in the legislative season, Cal Grant reform. And then AB 1752 by Santiago. This is a part-time parity bill. It was originally a bill last year from CTA, co-sponsored by FACCC. I think it was AB 1269, I think, by Garcia. And the idea of this bill is to really try and establish a statewide definition of parity for part-time faculty. And this bill is a little bit different in how it was written last year. Last year, the Chancellor's office was in opposition to the bill, which is really what killed it. They said it would cost too much money. So we're hoping that this one also moves forward. So let's see if there's any questions about, let's see, I'd love to see receive presentation of bills from outside groups. If you can share it, Wendy. Sorry to bother you this request during the presentation. I don't know what that is, Bob, but you can call me and we'll figure it out. And I am going to pop in, because this I think is interesting. I'll hit the next slide and then
Is it that 10-year
one.
time span of all the bills that came down?
I think it's helpful if I can get it to go. Oh,
And
nope,
we can
it's
also,
blocked. I can't do it. I'll have to email it to
Okay.
you guys.
Mhm.
Sorry, it won't let me.
We have it
Hold
in
on.
other slides too. I bet if
Mhm.
you go to the Academic Senate and look at the fall plenary session for the legislative presentations we did, you'll find it in there.
Yeah, and I can pop it into this slide deck, actually. I'll just
Oh
add
yeah,
it,
good
'cause it'd
idea.
be great to have. Yeah, so it's a great graphic I just did from the beginning of the ADTs back in 2010, I think, forward. So
These two bills,
go ahead.
AB 1505, rebench the full-time faculty obligation number. The Academic Senate just supported this bill, and we have long supported rebenching the obligation number, re-upping it. And I think, Wendy, you were going to say something on this, so I will be quiet and let you talk.
Yeah, this is a bill that we're co-sponsoring with the CCCI. And the league is already opposed to this, which is the league is the CEOs and the trustees, which is too bad. I mean, we have a lot of money in our system and our enrollment is going down. So this is a great time to make sure that our part-time faculty members are getting full-time jobs and that we have a stable faculty base in the state of California. So we're going to have to fight hard if we want to keep this one, but typically the full-time faculty obligation number floats down with enrollment and then back up with enrollment. So we have made very little progress in the full-time to part-time faculty ratio. And so this would be helpful in trying to not lose any ground as our enrollment floats back down. FACC is also sponsoring a Senate Resolution 45 on academic freedom. We wanted to do an academic freedom bill last year. Nobody wanted to touch it. And then there have been quite a few threats to faculty and academic freedom, to critical race theory, to book banning and burning. I mean, it has gotten bananas all of a sudden, more banana pancakes, Bob. And so all of a sudden our academic freedom bill looks more likely coming up next year in January of 23. But in the meantime, we were able to get the Senate to sponsor a resolution in support of academic freedom, and it will be held in the Senate Judiciary Committee this spring. So we look forward to the Senate. Yes, the Senate resolution is different than a bill. A bill is a piece of legislation. A resolution is a statement. But if you're trying to get a bill picked up and you're having trouble, a good way to go is to get somebody to sponsor a resolution, and then often you can make it a bill for next year. FACC also has a bill number yet to be introduced by a Rambler. We'll know by Friday, actually, that we might know today, and Stephanie forgot to tell me, but this bill will prevent students and faculty from being dead named. So it will request that there is a place to input the names, the preferred names and pronouns, and they'll appear on a roster so that you can use the preferred name for students from the absolute moment they walk into the classroom, which will prevent a lot of trauma from our students. This is a very popular bill. We're hoping that we will be able to get it through the legislature, and we'll let you know the number as soon as we have it. And then the last piece on the list so far for FACC this year is an audit. We're going to request an audit of the full-time faculty funding money. It seems like we got a lot in 2018. We got more in 2020 and 21, I guess. And then, somehow, we're not affecting more full-time faculty within the system. So why is that? The audit does follow a different timeline. So we will be working on this. It doesn't have that February 18th deadline.
And you have a question, Wendy, or we have a question, but I'm guessing you would answer it.
Yes. So Calbright was held back. It's a 2-year bill. So it was 1432. Oh my God, you guys, it's late. You're really working me tonight for the bill numbers. I think it's AB 1432. And it was held by the author last year because otherwise it would probably have not made it through. The reason it was held is there was an audit being performed of Calbright. And so the legislature decided to wait and to see what that audit said. It has been reintroduced. I believe it is still AB 1432. And CFT is the sponsor and FACC was the co-sponsor. Last year, we haven't gone through our whole sponsorship package yet. So we may also be a co-sponsor of the bill. I just don't know yet. Okay, so we have some homework for you as we're kind of coming up on the last 10 minutes here. So we would like you to do a few things because we're giving you a call to action today. So we're hoping that you will identify who your California senator and assembly member are for both your college and your personal residence if they're different. You should also reach out and make an appointment with your legislature. Again, you can Google their website, and then there's a place where you can email their staff or scheduler, and you can say that you are a faculty member in the California community colleges and you'd really like to meet with their legislative staff about some upcoming bills or anything else. Remember, it's not just chit chat, get to know them quick, establish a connection, but then get to something that's important. We'd love you to join our new FACC Advocates listserv. All you have to do is send an email. So open up an email, and in the to area, you just write FACC Advocates, the +, subscribe at googlegroups.com. You'll receive an automatic email back that says, are you sure? And we say, yeah, you say yes, and then you've joined. I try and send out, now the legislative season's back up, I try and send out an email once a week. I sent out a bunch of budget documents today. I sent out something about Senate budget tomorrow, meeting tomorrow. So that's a way that we can communicate with you. You don't have to be a FACC member to do it, but we're trying to build that listserv. I have a couple hundred people on it. I want it to be 55,000 faculty members. So please share it with as many people as you can and get as many people to join it as you can. Number 4, I'm going to give it to Ginny.
Okay, so identify your local academic senate legislative liaison. And then here's a big hint, ask your academic senate president who that person is. Or it could be a group of people. But if you don't have one for your academic senate, volunteer to serve in that role. Or if you can't volunteer, volunteer someone else to serve in that role. And that person will communicate with the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges, the statewide Academic Senate, and bring that information to your local Academic Senate. They will also help keep track of legislation in the area and help organize visits with your Academic Senate president. So find out who that person is. You can also go to the Academic Senate website and search and find out and see if someone is already designated. But I recommend you go to your Academic Senate president and ask. So another thing you can do is add a discussion of state legislation or policy to your Academic Senate agenda. There's ways for people to come in and add agenda items on there. So again, talk to your Academic Senate president and do that. And then it's so important, tell 10 friends or 2 or 3 or 4 or 20 friends about legislation and share through a Senate or department meeting. Get more people involved. Not everybody will want to go talk with the legislature, will want to provide public comment, but the more that do, the more they hear you, the more we are able to influence what happens with our education.
Is that her or me?
On that later.
I think you're
Pardon me?
You're breaking up a little bit, but that's okay. I think we got most of it.
Am I frozen?
Yeah. Yes, you're frozen. So I we had a comment in the chat with the email Google groups that went to somebody's junk. Thank you, Angelica, excuse me. So make sure you check when you try and join the listserv. If it goes to your junk mail folder, make sure you add that address so that it doesn't end up in the junk mail. There was something else I was going to mention. I totally forgot because you started breaking up and now I can't remember what it was. So that's okay.
Oh, I did freeze. Where did I end?
We got 99.99% of it. So
okay.
We have some other links that are here for you guys, how to find and search Ed Code or the Code of Regulations, which is Title V. And then, the Board of Governors website, Consultation Council website, both of which are online and you can watch if you really want to, if you want to watch Ginny and I on Thursday morning, you can come watch Consultation Council. And then also there's a great article in a Senate rostrum on Senate and union relations. Ginny and I find a lot of times we do a Senate union relations presentation at different events, and it's helpful to understand the purview and the scope of the two bodies and how we can work together to make sure faculty are super strong and we're advocating together rather than fighting each other. I do know that that can be a local issue. So that's a good link there if you want some background. I did remember what I wanted to say, and that is that I have spent quite a bit of time jumping from Senate meeting to Senate meetings, some union meetings, and then also some smaller faculty meetings. Los Rios asked me to come to do some legislative training. I went to College of the Canyons, my own college, and did this webinar on a super speed, but I did it. So I am happy to pop into any Senate meeting and do a quick legislative update. I'm happy to do a little advocacy training, whatever's needed. So there's my email. You can email me. It's helpful if you can give me possible dates and times so that I can check my calendar when I respond to you. But if you can't get people to come join us at the next webinar, which is the same thing, we're going to do the same webinar, we get better at it. But if you can't get people to join us and you know a good faculty body that we can come to, I would be happy to go and do training there, because again, we need 55,000 faculty advocating for our students, and we don't have that many right now.
And if you want the Academic Senate to come out, then your best bet is to send an email to info@asccc.org and make the request, or you can go to our website and click on services. And this needs to go through your local Academic Senate president for this request.
Okay, phew. So I think we made it.
4 minutes to spare.
4 minutes to spare. Let's just make sure there's not any other questions. I will send you all the little file I was trying to send you, and I'll add it to this somewhere in this document too, so you have the link. But it is I think a helpful timeline if you want to kind of know what's been happening with legislation that's outside special interest groups are doing. I'm glad you came. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Go tell 10 friends. Have them join us in March or April or May. And we will, when we have the recording available, we'll make sure we send it out to you, and then you can share it that way too.
And for all you math folk and amortization folk and exponential growth folk, if you tell 10 people and those 10 people tell 10 people, how long will it be till we reach 50,000 people?
It can happen fast if you guys help. It can happen fast, and we need you. So thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop